welcome back. We have reached the last morning of the meditation days we have together, and we are looking at confidence. I also have a question again from the Relax and Grow community that was sent before I started preparing for this, and I will read it out. How long can it take to see the results from meditation? I often have a fallback and wonder whether all my meditation is a waste of time. So, how can you have confidence and trust that this path, that what you're doing is actually working? So one of the things is we often don't realize the changes. You're talking about a fallback. So what do you fall back to? I guess you're referring that you drop meditating, for example, or that you get angry, or that other defilements might arise in your mind, that you really long for something, that there's a very strong craving. But please realize that the practice has an effect, and that if you wouldn't be practicing, it most likely would be quite different. And also, when these things happen, what do you fall back onto? And that's when I always feel it. If something difficult comes up, there is something which supports me. There is something that I have practiced for a long time, and that, so to speak, comes and catches me when I am falling. I recall when my father was dying, it was a really difficult time, but also an inspiring time to be able to be with him, but also to realize how I could go through that time, how I could go and be with him, for example, when he was dying, and how fear would arise, but then how the practice would kick in, how loving kindness would come and flow because it was practiced before. And I'm sure that would be happening for you as well. So say if anger arises for you, it won't last as long. You won't believe it as much. And the practice will come, support you, and catch you. The other thing I also realize is when there is less meditation, for example, and your life is really busy and all these kind of things, at least for myself, when I do intensify the practice, then I do feel the effects. And I'm pretty sure that if you are mindful enough, if you don't just meditate and then get up and run away or run around in the world again, take a bit of time to feel the impact that the meditation has, the relaxation, the clarity, all those kind of things. So when I'm guiding meditations for the whole meditation, then I always, and that's what I've learned from Ajahn Brahm, have this period at the end where we check in, where we take notes, where we assess what has happened and how the mind has changed over time. And very often those changes, we don't really see them because we are not mindful enough, because we don't stop, we don't listen, we don't investigate. And another beautiful simile that Ajahn Brahm is using is the simile of the fog. So here in Melbourne, here over in Newbury especially, up in the hills, we actually do have quite a bit of mist, quite a bit of fog. And when you are walking through the mist and the fog, you might not feel like you are getting wet. But if you are walking for long enough, then that will soak into your jacket especially if it's made out of wool or made out of some material where it can actually stick. And you will realize that you are almost drenched with that water, with that moisture that is in the air. So it's not the same like when you're out in the rain and it's very obvious and very clear and it happens very, very quickly. But it is a process that takes more time. So your mind becomes saturated with those teachings. Your body also becomes saturated with relaxation and with ease. So please don't dismiss that. And check in and find out for yourself if what I'm saying actually makes sense. Usually it's helpful to do it right after the meditation. That's one good thing. And then do it over many, many years. So reflect if something happens and see how would I have reacted to this maybe 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, and you will realize that you would have reacted in a different way, in a more unwholesome way, and you have learned some skills through meditation. So it's not a waste of time. But sometimes we say if we can really waste time in terms of not doing anything, then that is a beautiful way of wasting your time. So with confidence, I wanted to reflect exactly on that. So it's interesting that the question also talks about falling back. There is this, is it called a game maybe, or I don't know, this intervention or this practice that you might have done in groups before to trust other people. And you stand and there is 1 or 2 people that stand there with you. You stand there with closed eyes usually, and you fall backwards. You let yourself fall with the knowledge, with the confidence, with the trust that those people are there to catch you, to support you. And that's what I wanted to practice, wanted to bring into the next meditation there as well. How we can allow ourselves to fall into meditation. We actually use this word falling in many other areas in life as well. So we fall asleep. It needs trust. It needs confidence to fall asleep. If we are nervous, if we are thinking all over the place, if we are not at ease, then that doesn't happen usually. We fall into love, for example. So we wouldn't do that either if we wouldn't trust, if we wouldn't be attracted in some way by the other person. And then, of course, some people do all sorts of funny falling, falling down from a bridge with a bungee cord on the other end, or even jumping and falling out of planes. But again, always with the knowledge, with the confidence, with the trust that there is a parachute, or that is another person that you're falling out of the plane with who has a parachute and who has experience. And so we can trust the process, we can trust the Dhamma, we can trust the truth, we can trust the way things are, basically, in Buddhism. One other way to think about falling is also usually when we think about falling, like falling out of a plane, jumping out of a plane, and the leap of faith there, and then the falling which happens afterwards. we are falling towards something. And that is what gravity is all about. Maybe, but gravity is all about when you think about it in simple terms. So usually you are being attracted by a certain body, and that pulls you towards it, and that's what we call gravity. So we say what goes up must come down. Now that's a fairly accurate description of gravity, as Ajahn Brahm has said in his teachings in the past as well, but it is not completely true. What about the moon? The moon is not falling onto the earth, is it? It's actually falling around the earth, and it's orbiting around the earth. And because there is a balance, it is actually not falling towards something or away from something. It is moving in space. So when you let yourself fall into meditation, you start to realize that you are not falling towards something where you will crash. You're actually flying. You're actually floating. And then if you imagine an object that is falling through space, so to speak, moving through space, it will get attracted by certain object, or it will kind of change its course depending on the other bodies that are around that have an influence on it. But what about if those things start to disappear? Like in the mental world, if there is thoughts and emotions and they pull you around or they push you around, but once they calm down, once there is less and less of those things, you are still moving, but you might as well just be still while you're moving, because there is no reference point anymore. You're not moving from A to B. You're not moving towards C or away from D. All these kind of concepts start to lose their meaning at that point. And you just are. Let's meditate now. So, can we trust? Do we have enough confidence to let ourselves fall into things? Fall into your body, fall into your mind, fall into the breath, fall into the present moment, fall into stillness, fall into a very deep sense of peace. Fall into joy, fall into vanishing, disappearing, cessation. And initially, as I mentioned, we trust that there is something we fall back onto. There is something we fall into. that supports us, that carries us. But the more subtle the process becomes, the more we realize there is no falling. There's no falling into from one place to another place. Falling becomes a floating, becomes a flying. So let's close our eyes, let them fall shut. So that we don't engage the sense of seeing which pulls us out into the world, out into distance and shapes and forms and movement. Let's go in the opposite direction, falling back into, not falling forward. Falling back into our bodies. Back into physicality. Into being and feeling this body of ours. And as you're falling into your body, just have a look around, have a feel around. Is there any resistance? When we are falling in a sense of flying or floating, we're like being carried, supported. Let's see if you can give that kind of feeling to your bones, your muscles, to the flesh, the sinews. all the organs, all the bits and pieces. Let's see if there is still some places where you feel you're holding on instead of just releasing and falling back into a natural state of ease and relaxation. Maybe check your eyes and release. Check your jaw and let go. Check your neck and let it fall into place. Neck and the head. And then the whole spine. All the way down to the hips. Releasing. Allow your chest to be open. No holding back. Let your belly be smooth. And then let your arms, including the shoulders, just fall into your lap. Letting go of any holding with confidence. that they will fall into the right place. That you can just let them hang loose. And then the same with your legs. Make sure there is no tension, no tightness. That they are arranged in such a way that they can be let go of, that they can be released, that they can naturally fall into a comfortable posture. They are in a relaxed state. Maybe focus on your feet for a little while. How they rest on the ground, no effort. Or how they are tucked away when you're sitting cross-legged. And also your hands. Let them rest and relax. And then let us return to the face and make sure the face is all loose. And as you relax, as you fall back into this natural, restful state in your body, all the reference points that were there before are just blurry. And like miles away. Like a haze, like a mist, but a very comfortable mist. And you can just allow yourself to fall or to sink even deeper. Have the breeze of peace blow away and disperse even that feeling of a misty body. So that it can fade and eventually disappear or almost disappear. And then you can let your thoughts and emotions, the movement of the mind, just fall freely. And sail past like the snowflakes when they're falling softly and gently. They're just floating. Falling, settling, and then becoming a part of the ground where there is no separate snowflakes, no separate thoughts anymore. Just a thick white blanket of snow. Of silent, still snow. And it might have been snowing quite heavily before. or there might have been quite a bit of wind whirling around with your snowflakes. But as you progress, as things become more quiet, more at rest, that all dies down. It's less and less snowflakes, less and less movement. Until there is just an occasional snowflake here, an occasional snowflake there, which you hardly notice. And all you're left with is the clear, crisp, cool air. And then I invite you to have confidence, to allow yourself to fall into the process of breathing. This gentle, rhythmic movement of the air coming in and going out, blowing in and blowing out. Peacefully, calmly, joyfully. But even with the breath, don't worry about the beginning, the middle, or the end. Just let yourself fall into it. Flow with it. And just gently be rocked by it, back and forth, like a child is rocked by its mum or dad. To be able to fall asleep. But we are falling awake. Enjoy the rest of your meditation.